All right, well, welcome everybody to today's Survivor Circle session. I am Becky Perkins, the Survivor Support Specialist with Zero Abuse Project, and we are very pleased to welcome you here today. I've got two of my favorite people here to lead a great discussion, so very excited to be here today. Just a couple of quick notes before we get started. This is being recorded, so if you need to step away for your self-care, for your schedule, please feel free to do that. You can always revisit the recording later on. It'll be available on Zero Abuse Project's YouTube channel and also on the Survivor Circle's webpage on Survivor Space. Folks who are attending today's session, your camera and your audio are automatically disabled for your safety, your privacy, your security. So we can't see you, we can't hear you, but we welcome you to type a question or comment in the chat box at the bottom of your screen. When you do, you have the option of the audience who receives your question or comment being everyone, including Angie, Russell, and I, and everyone attending, or if you just want to send a note to Angie, Russell, and I, you can do that as well. But we are so glad to welcome you here today, and without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Angie Kahn and Russell Wilson. Welcome.
Hey, everybody.
Russ, you can take it away first, Russ.
Oh, I'm the one taking it away first. Okay.
Hey, we talked about this.
So I'm Russell Wilson. I am a lived experience subject matter expert and consultant on human trafficking, and all aspects of human trafficking. I've been studying and researching this topic for 10 years now. Ever since I went to college and got introduced to the movement, and didn't even realize that I was part of that community, until I started to get engaged in understanding this on a deeper level. I have traveled the world and studied also meditation and Buddhism, Islam, Hinduism, Christianity. I have a degree from Berkeley in anthropology and South and Southeast Asian studies. So people and culture and religion and law, and I have many, many interests and looking at how they all intersect, from culture to interpersonal growth. And I think it's one of the many reasons that Angie and I are such close and dear friends and professional colleagues. And I love hanging out with her and chatting about all kinds of stuff. In fact, we already did that last night for over an hour.
We did.
And I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Russ. I'm Angie Kahn. I am also a lived experience subject matter expert in a couple of things, but really just I like to think in life because I have had the sometimes accidental and sometimes amazing on purpose opportunity to explore all kinds of different healing modalities, and just talk to different people that have had different experiences, like Russ said, with different they have different backgrounds and come from all kinds of different spaces. And I just love engaging with people. And so I am a survivor of CSA, of course, and a human trafficking as a teenager and an adult, and foster care, all of the things that go along with that. So I always love to bring the wisdom, hard lived sometimes, that I learned in that space, and also the things that I've been doing since in my healing. Healing is messy and it's expensive, and my heart is to be able to learn things and then be able to take that and break that down and be able to offer that back to survivors that can't afford to go to a facility or get get help in other ways, because I believe that we all deserve healing, and we all deserve different types of healing opportunities. So I am equally excited. Russ is struggling with out in the country. He's struggling with his internet. So you're on mute. That famous "you're on mute" that we've been doing for 3 years. On mute.
Sorry,
So I'm excited.
okay. Thank God I was right next to the main house, and we have much better signal here, so I should be okay now. Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah, no, you're good. I was wrapping up anyway, so I want to hear, like, I asked Russ, when I was thinking about like topics I wanted to talk about, this was absolutely one of them, and I picked February because of, because Valentine's Day and all of that. But I really was thinking about like who do like I want to hear like and invite into the space. And Russ, like, you are one of my favorite people in this topic, just because of your variety, like expansion of experience with healing, because you are a thriver in a place that we are in. Russ and I also work together, so we're in the anti-trafficking movement. We've been in the movement for like 10 years, but within that space, there's a lot of people, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with how we self-identify, but a lot of people identify as survivors, and Russ is like, I identify as a thriver. And I was always along board, but the first time I heard you speak and you said that, I'm like, yes, like, why can't we do like thriver leaders or something? Yeah. So I would love to hear like your thoughts on this topic and why you said yes.
Said yes to hanging out with you and talking about this because you asked me. I mean, I love you. You're and I feel safe with you. Thank you. That's huge, right? When you feel safe with somebody, you want to say yes and have a great time. And we always have a great time. So that was the main reason I said yes. Second to that is this is an important conversation. I mean, loving oneself is a constant lesson, journey, uphill battle sometimes. And while I feel that I've gotten pretty good at it, I have my moments, and then there's that deeper level of that subconscious self-loathing, that subconscious way we talk to ourselves that puts us down, that makes us feel as though we're not worthy, that we don't deserve success, love, relationship, all of the qualities that life has to offer. And then for those of us that have been through extreme trauma for extended, long periods of our lives, we sort of get trained emotionally and intellectually, spiritually, that we're not worthy of love. We don't know how to recognize healthy forms of love. And so we gravitate to, self-sabotage and a sense of unworthiness. And again, whether that's a conscious sense or a subconscious sense, it's both, right? And so we tend to gravitate towards drama and unhealthy people and all that. And so I think learning how to love yourself beyond that, so that you start to bring healthier engagement with life on a daily basis, is why this conversation is important. Because even if you haven't been through extreme trauma, this is not an easy thing for people to learn. And we live in a society through the media, and now with social media and Facebook and Snapchat and all these TikTok and all these things that make us feel bad about ourselves because we don't have our 15 minutes of fame, and in particular younger generations who are really susceptible to that. It just perpetuates this lack of self-love. And so as one who can sometimes be accused of loving himself too much, I felt it was important to have this conversation.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought all of that up, because we are living swimming against the current when it comes to radical self-love, because people do look at it as selfish. You need to love yourself. Oh, wait a second, you're loving yourself too much. Like it's like so much contradiction. Um and people are bombarded with images of highlight reels from people's lives, and never mind that it took 100 shots to get that one shot, right? And all of the arguing and the yelling and the screaming behind the scenes, and then people see the smiles. And so we're up against this world of comparison too, I believe. And we compare trauma, we compare healing, we compare children, we compare like all of the things, and we're such beautiful, unique individuals, every single person. And every single person, I have the belief that every person, has something to say that can benefit. Now, in that being said, are there people that say harmful things, like people that conditioned, us to believe that we were not worthy and that we would never be anything. Even in that I learned. And it taught me something, and people don't understand that part of my brain of like every single ounce of pain I went through has taught me something, to better myself. Yes, it's left a mark, and yes, I have residue. Like that's not, I think sometimes people half hear what people say when they're explaining things like this. And radical love, it's not an instant decision. Like it was a slow cooker process, right? Like it was the slow, an idea was sparked here, and then it didn't take, and so it took a while for it to come to, and I wouldn't even say it's in full bloom in my life. It's still, like you said, Russ, like there are moments that I still can find myself down in that space of really huge bouts of self-loathing, and of imposter syndrome, and of those things that that lie to me and tell me like nobody's ever really going to love anybody like you. Like you think these people like you, they don't, like, all of those things that speak against healing, and thriving. They still pop up. There's those kind of like, I love wildflower fields and stuff. There's something about them that just bring a little like spark of joy when I'm driving and I see them. But within that wildflower field, there's like weeds that are in there, and it's kind of like how I see the field of my healing journey. Like there are times like there's going to be among the beauty, there's going to be those ugly pieces that pop up, and healing's messy. That's why I call it the messy middle. This is the messy middle that we're in. And it's not a destination we arrive at. Like it's a constant continuing process.
I think that messy middle for me, the middle part is between birth and death. That's the middle. And so it's messy from the day we're born to the day we die. Life is messy. And you get moments of joy and happiness and fulfillment, but I think the vast majority of life, and this may be my cynicism speaking, but the vast majority of life is difficult and hard and stressful and challenging and a lot of work. And full disclosure, I gravitate to Buddhist philosophy. So I do believe it is cyclical, that we come, and we're practicing this practice. I don't know if it's until we get it right. I don't know what right is, but I do believe that we get more than one opportunity to evolve, at least as a spiritual being. This is our one chance. This is our one opportunity. So you can't go through life, thinking otherwise. But yeah. Anyways, I was gonna say, you said something that it's a process. And I agree with that. It is a process. It takes practice.
Mm.
But I also have a firm belief that change is instant.
Mm.
And everything up until that moment of change is practice.
Mm.
I remember distinctly a time I was 15 or so. I was incarcerated in a very dangerous juvenile prison in Southern California. I was in solitary confinement for an extended period of time. And I thought to myself, I had a lot of time to think deeply. And I thought two things. I thought, boy, if there's ever any time I wanted to commit suicide, it was then.
Mm.
But because I of my understanding of Buddhism and life and the philosophies therein, I thought, well, if life is cyclical, if we are born and reborn and we come back again, suicide has got to be the most embarrassing thing one could do when you get to the other side. Because everybody that is on that other side of existence is going to look at you and laugh like, why did you just, you just got to go back and do it again. You're just starting over. So for me, it was not an option, but the other part of that was that I decided that, and it was in that instant, right? It was an instant moment of my life where I decided that happiness was a choice.
Mm.
And I know I get a lot of pushback on that because I know that there is clinical, biological, chemical parts of us that sometimes don't flow and work properly. And depression is a real thing, and so I don't want to discount that. I don't want to invalidate that for anybody at all and on any level. And again, this is a
Yeah.
very personal opinion, a personal choice, a personal way of going through life. I have chosen that life and happiness is a choice, and I choose to be happy. I had a moment later in life. My son was about 14, 15 years old, and he was going through a very angry phase in his adolescence and was, resentful of the fact that he was even born. It's your fault,
Mhm.
Dad, I'm like, yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. It is. But I also have a belief that you choose this life. So I said, yeah, but
Mm.
you chose me as a dad. So he got really
Yeah.
angry at that. So
And I
anyways,
will,
yeah, let me just,
yeah.
he says to me, I'm cooking dinner. He says, Dad, you know what really pisses me off about you? And of course, as a parent, I like, whatever, like, okay, what pisses you off now about it's like, you probably had one of the worst childhoods of anybody, and you're always so damn happy.
Oh,
And I'm like, because I choose to be happy. No matter what I've been through in life, I want to be happy. And that's the same thing, I think, when it comes to loving yourself.
mhm.
It's a choice. You have to make the choice to love yourself. You have to find a small, whatever it is at the time, especially if you're struggling with it, find something that you feel good about yourself and build on that. And if you do that, it grows. It's like cultivating a garden and like your wildflowers. I love wildflowers too. I bought like a 50-pound bag of wildflowers, and I scattered them all over my property.
Mm.
So they're everywhere. But that's
Yeah.
because I found something that I love, and I cultivated it, and I nurtured it, and it grew. And eventually, it gave me the courage and strength to uh to go to college,
Yeah.
to to see myself worthy of going to college and getting that education, um, having, a positive relationship with my kids, attracting healthy people in my life. So I think that's how my journey of self-love started.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say, you know, Russ and I said in the beginning of this, if you're just joining us, like we are sharing our own personal journey and our personal wrestlings with things. And when we share about different things we've experienced, it is our personal journey. So we're not saying that you should believe that or you should feel that way. It is really this wrestling. And I think we live in this society that really I am my spiritual belief. I am a deconstructing Christian, and I know that word is trendy right now. So you know, kind of look beyond that. But there was a lot of beliefs that were instilled in me about worth and value through my religion for a long time. And so now, you know, I'm navigating that journey, and there are things that, you know, I'm leaving, and things that, you know, that work for me, that I'm still holding close to my heart. But even when I was in that space of really rigorous, like, you have to believe this, and we're trying to get everybody to believe this way, you know, I wasn't fully buying in, because I believe, like, I can learn from everyone. Like, I want to learn from everyone. I want to learn from those that of different religions and cultural backgrounds and spaces. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there. That was on my heart, because we kind of get, you know, we can get defensive with one another, right? We can get offended so easily because we're not listening with our heart. We're listening with our hurt. And that was part of my journey of understanding. And I say radical self-love because it is to me, radical self-love is an act of defiance against everyone that ever hurt me. Yeah. Right? Because what they believed about me was, you know, was always, you know, hatred, radical hate. Because they're trying to, and maybe they believe that about themselves. I don't know, maybe not. But I do know that they couldn't have felt good about themselves to do the things to me that they did. And so for a long time, like, that self-loathing of my body and the parts of my body that were wounded most by others was just, I think it just oozed out of me. Like, it oozed out of me, and it came out for me. It came out and manifested in anger. So I was one of those teenagers that I will fight you to death. Like, this is the death match, right? Because I was just so enamored and really it had just chiseled around my heart for that 15 years, you know. And I think I keep picking 15 because that was the year that even though it was in discussion and I had been in trouble and been part of juvenile justice before that, it was that year that my family of origin said, like, we can't deal. You are like, they had always said you're too much, but they said, like, let's sign you away, because you're not, I don't want you to be our problem anymore. You're going to be their problem.
And you know what? You are still too much sometimes, but in the most wonderful ways, you know. I love it. It's like, it's the fact that you are too much sometimes that I love you and love being around you, because it's just, you know, it's exciting, you know, and
Thank
fun.
you.
Never boring.
Thank you. Because that's the parts of ourself that really other people weaponize against us, are the parts of ourself that we weaponize against ourselves, and we end up hating those parts of ourself and exiling those parts, right? Like, we just shove that down instead of realizing, like, I do internal family systems, so I speak from that kind of lens, but instead of realizing, like, all the parts of me, that those fragmented parts that have been wounded, and my core center, who I am in my core, and the parts that try to manage life and ease the pain, all of them are welcome. For so long, I fought against them, and I tried to purge, so to speak, purge those parts that I hated, you know, those secular patterns of, you know, doing something harmful to myself and then regretting it, and waking up the next morning and going, why did I do that? Like, I hate myself. I hate that about myself. Like, coming to peace with those, doing a reckoning of sorts with those parts of myself, and sitting down. Like, I have to visualize. I do a lot of visualization, and I know you, as someone that practices, like, meditation and like, visualizing visualizing that part of me, whether it's a part or an age or whatever, and my present self and my future self having a conversation. Like, I believe I love circles, and being able to, because I believe that a circle, we can see, like, we can see each other in a circle. Like, and that's why I like the symbol of circleism, like, and restoration and, restorative justice and all those things. You can see people's faces. And I believe, like, even though we were wounded in community, there's healing in community. And for a long time I wanted to shut everybody out, but like, as I stand in a circle with those parts of myself, that core center of me having compassion, on that part that's really acting out. And this was, I don't know if this is to be proven true, because there's lots of theories against it. Some people say it's true, some people say it's not, but they were talking about a tribe in Africa that, like, when somebody does something against someone, that they put them in the middle and they say all of the kind things over them. They speak to their value instead of to the action that they did. And I don't know that this is, it's just been one of those things that you see, popping up and when you look at healing. But I'm like, that's what restorative justice is. That's a phenomenal, like, concept. And so that's what I try to do with those pieces that I want to keep exiled and keep isolated, because I can't heal. For me, like, I can't heal in those fragmented spaces, because there's too much darkness there that can vortex me. So
I wanted to acknowledge Kay Aguilar's comment about suicide. I thought that was really right on point, and I really appreciated that input.
Yeah. So Kay said, whenever suicide comes up in and around people, I ask, is this life you want to end, or your current situation? Yeah. Asking those deeper questions of, is it your whole life, or is it this part right now that is causing you so much pain?
Yeah.
Because if it's this part that's causing you so much pain, the fact that, Russ, at 15 years old and having gone through what you've gone through, you sit in solitary confinement, because I've been in solitary confinement, and it is, oh God, there is nothing that, and yeah, that's a whole other circle that we can talk about.
It was, a very bottom time in my life when I was sitting there in solitary confinement. I hated it. It was a horrible experience. And yet years later, I actually went out of my way to seclude myself, and I know this is extreme, but I was like living in a cave in the Himalayas in India on a 30-day silent retreat for myself, just meditating every day with no verbal communication with any other human beings, no interaction, which is basically a form of solitary confinement, right? Only it was something I chose to do. So there was, and there was a goal set in doing that process and stuff. So it's funny how, a similar situation, how we can view it in one way as a very dark and horrible experience, and in another situation, flip that script and turn it into a positive learning experience and growth opportunity. And I think that, that is, again, I kind of want to try my best, for the sake of why we're all here and have this conversation, to always try to bring it back to self-love and loving yourself and caring for yourself. And I think that that is a tool that I have employed when I am in a dark place. I think about it, I unpack it, and then I say, how is it that I have the power and the control and the agency, whether it's physically or in my mind and in my heart, to flip that script and take this situation and turn it into a growth opportunity and a way to evolve. And so, and that's not always easy. I fall short frequently in my efforts, but that is the effort. That's the process that I try to go through when it comes to caring for myself. I find myself um, doing that in my intimate relationship,
Mhm.
of trying to really build a life with this person and a partnership. And this is where my lack of self-love
Yeah.
really interrupts the relationship, and I try hard to um, look at that when challenges come up, when my partner is trying to help me and support me and help me grow, and I push back because I'm like, oh, I don't want you to tell me what to do, and that's none of your business, or this is my life, I want to live it my way. And I forget sometimes that sometimes she loves me more than I love myself,
Mm.
and I have to
Yeah.
remind myself of that she's doing this from a place of love, and how do I embrace that love? Because if you don't love yourself, you can't embrace love from others.
Mhm.
And so I realize, even just in this conversation, that sometimes when I push back in that relationship, it's my lack of love for myself, thinking I'm not worthy of her love and her
Mm.
stuff. And so so yeah, I have to remind myself of that all the time.
Yeah, I kind of wanted something that you said, Russ, about being in solitary when you were 15 and in a juvenile facility, and then later in life choosing. I think that was the difference, though, in the two, right? When our autonomy is taken and stripped away from us, there is a suffering that happens in us, and when we get that choice, there still may be a sort of suffering, but it's in a different way. It's a suffering for like the betterment of ourselves, because it's a choice that we've made. I
Yeah.
hope that makes sense. And I think that's what's important to point out. Yes, you learned from that 15-year-old self, because really, like, you're backed in a corner, and we learned. But then the things that you learned, later on, when you chose to exile and go into the space, for yourself, was that one of those reckoning moments, I call
Yeah.
them. And that is the beauty of, like, when I look back on my journey, like, those yeah, there were spaces, like, I was forced into these spaces, and I did, like, wrestle through and learn, but it was those spaces that I chose, and I had more autonomy over, and that people walked alongside me, not for their selfish motives of whatever gold star they want for whoever they want. I used to, yeah, we won't get to that, but, like, people's motives, right? And that's one thing that survivors of childhood trauma, can really sniff out, is those people that are their motives, man. Like we can, and people don't understand it, but when you're wounded as a very young child, you learn micro expressions, and you learn people, and you study people, because when you walk into a room, you have to know how to read people, because your survival depends on it, your life depends on it. And so, even though that was a maladaptive tool that I learned, I'm learning it in a different way, relearning it, like rewriting that narrative. And I think for self-love, for me, it's been about moments of rewriting narratives
Yeah.
that other people have written. And so I believe that I kind of think of, because I do see life like in more metaphoric, and visual ways. But I believe, like, we're born into this life just a blank slate, and for the first bit of our life, other people are controlling, like, what goes on that canvas.
See, and this is
And
where we're different, because I don't believe it at all.
yeah, I mean, hey, but it's worked for you. What you believe has worked for you,
Oh,
right? What I believe.
yeah.
And so that's where people stifle people's healing, is when they can't have these kind of conversations and go, like, because I think what you believe and what has gotten you to where is phenomenally beautiful. And I wouldn't want to change that and, like, redo that for you in any way.
Yeah.
And I know that you have the same respect for me. And that's where people, like, pull people back and hold people from healing, is when they won't let them have those moments, when they're trying to get them to be pushed into this corner or this box of conformity and of,
Misery loves company,
yeah.
and that there's no truer statement. people who don't love themselves well, don't want to do that alone. So they want to bring you down. I mean, I remember distinctly many times in my life when I wanted to do something really positive for myself, but the people around me just poo-pooed that idea and were like, nah, that's going to fail. That's a waste of time. Why would you bother doing that? You
Yeah.
know? And I listened. I would listen because I, didn't love myself well. And so I went along with that and it perpetuated. So recognizing that and it's okay to cut people out of your life.
Mm.
Um, even if they claim to be your friend, and I also wanted to touch on and this is an extreme example, but what you were saying about recognizing micro expressions and being able to read people is and then we learned that through extremely violent and traumatic spaces.
Yeah.
But I mean, the example I use is that I had to know whether that person was going to pull the trigger or not.
Yeah.
Quite literally. When I was around extremely dangerous people and in extremely dangerous environments, people
Mm.
died, and
Yeah.
if you weren't on point with where that person was coming from, who had
Yeah.
all the power in that room, you
You're
know.
gonna join them. Yeah.
So I think but I think to bring that full circle, when I give my talks about my growth and men and boys and all the systemic issues around men and boys and sexual trauma and such, I think that one of the things I try to express is that we never get rid of the trauma, but what we can do is we can have a healthy relationship with that trauma
Mm.
and turn that trauma into an asset, not a deficit. And that's my goal. And I love that journey and I love that work. And when those opportunities come up, sometimes I'm like, oh God, here we go.
Yeah.
But when I get through that onto the other side of that, I look back and I go, man, that was exhilarating. And
Mm.
so I'd like to say, and whether it's true or not, um, I'm on a constant journey of change, you
Mm.
know, and trying to know myself, better and better every day. To thine
Yeah.
own be true, right?
Yeah. I mean, and it is one of those things that it's not instantaneous, right? And there was a question from Jenny's group of when you've been told that you don't deserve happiness or love, but then you begin to experience it and now have it, how do you keep your brain from coming up with some kind of chaos to disrupt or sabotage it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good
It's
question.
I think for me, like it's part of the practicing, right? And then it's part of there's a technique called the rain technique that Tara Brock come up with. And if you don't, I'm gonna send Becky a list of resources that Russ and I will give you guys, and then she'll send that out, and I'll post it also on my social media spaces so that those of you that can have those resources. But really, with that rain technique, that's one of the biggest techniques that's helped me with that sort of thing because it is like you talked about in the beginning, a programming that happens very young for a lot of us, like extremely young, before we even have language. And I love, like, I am in school right now to be a yoga therapist, and I've studied somatic healing, and I believe that people that have experienced trauma need to, and this is my own personal belief again, do bottom up healing instead of top down healing, and our world is only top down healing. But that sense of that rain technique of recognizing what it is, investigating it, right? Like sitting with it and being curious over being judgmental,
Yeah.
Right. That was because I was my own worst critic, and we, you know, like I was the one that would, if there were a group of people turning on me, then I would join them. I would join them to beat myself up. And it's like, what, like who?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so getting, I think that invitation to myself to get curious about that, what's coming up inside of me, and kind of just and what it wants to teach me, instead of getting judgmental and then acting out on it, right, or joining in.
Yeah. Well, I always admire your intentional pursuit of method and technique. You know, I I mean, I think that's amazing. I do this, and maybe I'm genderifying this by saying it's a more masculine way and a feminine way, but for me, I think that I lean obviously into this more masculine method of just bumbling around in the dark until I get it figured out.
Mm.
I admire the fact that you can probably make a lot more progress on personal growth in a much shorter time than I do, but it's
I don't know if it's a much shorter time. I always say, like, I'm a neurospicy brain, so I'm neurodivergent, and so I always say take the long way around, like, because I'm always having to teach myself. I had to teach myself in school. I had to teach myself, like, of coming up with alternate ways of learning, because I'm not, like, I don't fit the mold of, like, hey, this is how you do it. I'm like, no, that doesn't make sense to me. I need to, like, so I go around the long way. And I would say, as far as like masculine, feminine, I think we are so, and this is probably a topic for another time, but we're so, like, you're either or, like, you're not both. And like learning that, like, we are, like, there are parts of me that leaned in that masculine space that's in me. Like, for a long time, I leaned into that side of me, and like learning to accept that feminine space that's inside of me was harder, because that's the space that people, like, wanted to, that they used violence against a lot for me, right, because just naturally, because of my biological gender, right. And so beginning to, like, dissect that, and realizing, like, I can have both of these beautiful spaces, that my masculine side has something to teach me, my feminine side has something to teach me, that's part of my journey of self-love too, that it's not, it doesn't have to lean clear over here or clear over here, that there's this beautiful fluidity to it, that I can make peace with and explore. And it's, it is a process. I think Karina asked very in the very beginning, like, why is it so hard? And it's so hard because of all of the constant programming that we were bombarded with before we even have language to understand what was happening to us. And our body, it imprints somatically on our body. And so we will get visceral responses, which are these responses in us that are subconscious, in situations that we thought, well, I thought I freaking healed from this. Why am I having this reaction? And we tend to get frustrated with ourselves. But what that is that it's something your body is trying to tell you. And we tend to want to escape those sensations instead of sitting with those. And I know, like, people get tired of, like, oh God, I got to sit with my freaking feelings. Like, why? And that's part of that bottom up healing of getting curious, because your body is trying to still tell you something. And so we've been taught in circles of religion that your heart is wicked, or your body doesn't know what it's saying, that you have to just, overcome it by this. And what's beautiful is we have 3 brains. And I know this might be too much of a explanation, but we have a brain in our gut, which actually it does have brain cells, right? Our gut. We have a brain in our heart, which has brain cells, and then we have our brain of what we consider a brain. And that's why, people, when they say they had a gut feeling, that was that part of us that's trying to teach us something, it's trying to tell us something. And that when you feel deeply, like, I feel things into my core, like down into, and I try to explain this to people, and they're like, that is crazy weird. But I feel it, like, in my bones. And people don't, like, some people don't understand that concept, but like music and poetry and those kind of thing, art, like I feel it like in my bones. Like it just speaks to me in a way that is so profoundly personal. But that part of me is trying to teach me something too. And so, and then, you know, these two parts, like below the neck, like know things before this does.
Yeah.
That's why we can't, like, that's in my thought, for me, top down healing hasn't worked because I can't think my way to it. I can't, for me, I can't, like, I have to get grounded and centered and feel calm first, and not necessarily feel my way through it all the way, but I have to have that kind of connection with it for it to take.
Yeah.
And that's like my journey of radical self-love is being okay with being like that, because that's not the way we're taught. And that's okay. Like it's okay to go against.
I
I
think
said we
that's
were swimming against the current. Like,
yeah, and I think that that's really one of the biggest challenges, especially for type A personalities, where everything has to be perfect. You know, they have to be perfect. Everything they do has to be perfect. Has to be just so. And they you know, I think I personally, to the chagrin of my partner, who is an A-type personality, I have always been able to be like, oh, that's good enough. I'm okay with
oh,
that's good enough. You know,
I
I've been
chuckle because I know your partner. So I chuckle because I love her so much.
oh,
But
she's the
yeah.
best. Yes, but she is very A-type personality, and we butt heads sometimes about like gotta be, and I'm like, baby, it's good enough. It's okay.
Yeah.
And that's a
Sometimes
hard
it does have to just be good enough, right? For now, good enough for now,
enough
right?
for
Like,
now. And that's
yeah,
okay, because you know, we'll get another opportunity. Trust me, we'll get another opportunity to build on this. And
yeah.
I think that
Yeah,
that's
and people that don't, you know, kind of think that way. I think there are some people that think, well, like, this is this a test? Am I being tested? Because if you fail the test, you'll get another chance to take the test. And it really is kind of
it is
like
a
there
test.
are things, there are repeating like cycles in my life that have come back around because it didn't take the first time. And I'm like, how many times do I have to do this? Like, I'm so tired of it. Like, and I'll get like so mad about it. And that 15-year-old that wants to burn it all down comes out.
I'm just curious, have you recognized in your life a timeline pattern of events, or of, so I'll give you an example for me in my personal life. I have a pattern of 3 years. Relationships, 3 years, then they end. You know, I can't seem to break that 3-year, you know, barrier in my personal relationships.
Yeah.
And not just in my personal. So my father died when I was 3, and my mother was not. She was very vocal about he subconsciously killed himself to a 3-year-old.
Right.
So you put these, like, I've been thinking about life and death and suicide and the meaning of all that since I was 3.
Right.
Because my
Since
mother,
before you should have.
I shouldn't be thinking about that stuff at 3 years old.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. And I think unfortunately that imprinted on you,
it did.
like before you had language for it.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
when things imprint on us before we even have the language for it, they can come up in our lives later on and be a repeating pattern. And I think that then that's a reckoning of okay, like, is this harmful? Is this helpful? Like, what, you know? And it's
Well, you know, the funny thing though is that even in things that are seemingly outside of my control seem to happen in 3-year patterns. You know, I was in community college for 3 years.
yeah.
I was at Berkeley for 3 years because I was a double major, so I got to take an extra year. So I was there for 3 years.
Yeah.
I was in juvenile hall, like juvenile incarceration, for 3 years. It just, there's this constant pattern of 3 years. I call it the 3-year curse. And I am, I'm really working hard to understand that and get to the root of that so that I can break that pattern.
Yeah. And I see that's something that's important to you. And I think that's why, that the questioning of it and the recognizing it, right? I don't know if I've had those patterns, because I tend to, like, when you look at my life, like, it's like coloring outside the lines. Like, that's what it looks like right now. So I don't know if I'm too helpful in that space, but I love listening as we wrestle with things. I love to sit with people as they're wrestling with things and just listen, because I think sometimes that's what we need. We want to try to, I wish Russ and I had this formula to bring you all the radical self-love, and we could continue this conversation. Russ and I can talk. I'm telling you, y'all, we can talk. And we've thought about, like, we talked about, we're going to do a podcast. So if you're interested in listening to Russ and I.
Yeah, and if anybody out there knows how to do a high level professional podcast and has resources for that, please let us know, because I think that I think it not just this conversations, but others that are really important, and especially when it comes to extreme trauma, and I'd love to create that space for at least 3.
Yeah. So as we wind down, I think we have 9 minutes left. I'm trying to think of, like, as we wind down, like, something that I want to leave with people. So I don't know, Russ, if you have something you want to leave
Yes.
people with.
A couple of things. What you said, I have 3 things that I want to say. We started out and you said, one of the things that you did that helped you was visualization techniques. Well, I intuitively figured out visualization techniques, but then I read this book called The Secret, and it lays out all these methods and techniques of visualization. But I proudly tell people that, I don't get just what I need in life. I get what I want. I've gotten everything I've ever wanted in life and out of life, even the bad things, because clearly I was in an unhealthy place for a long time in my life, and I brought bad things. So I clearly wanted those bad things in my life, and I brought them into my life. And I think that because that's my visualization, visualize bad things happening in my life. And so bad things continue to happen. And until I learned how to turn that narrative around and love myself and see myself worthy of good things, all of a sudden I started to visualize good things happening in my life, and good things started to happen. And so as a resource, a lot of people kind of minimize that book, but I think it was a great book. And the other thing would be impeccable with your words. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions, and always do your best. And I think if you can keep those 4 agreements with yourself, that's you're on the road to radical self-love for sure. And then also, if people are enjoying this conversation and want to hear you and I do this again, give us a topic, and we'll work with Becky, and we'll come back and we'll do another circle, and Angie and I will debate and have that topic, because sometimes we agree and sometimes we don't agree, but we still love each other. And it's always fun. So,
well, I think the difference, we can respect each other in the spaces that would come from, because we know we're having generous assumptions towards one another, knowing it's coming from a genuine space and not from a space of manipulation or coercion, right? And that's one thing I want to leave people with too. I don't want people to leave frustrated, because this is a continued conversation, right? So this is like a to be continued. But we're going to give you all a list of resources. I'll include any resources that people put in the chat. And we invite you to have a continued conversation. with people around you. You know, we're open to continued conversation about this, like Russ said, if you have specific things. Because I think that's part of this journey of radical self-love, like that longing to learn. I always was learning curious, but frustrated because my brain didn't work the way other people's brains worked. And no one, like I was late in life diagnosed, even though I knew at a very early age, I'm not like other people. And that feeling like not like other people kept me isolated when, you know, that's what I love about you most is you're not like other people. And I just thank you because you know, those I think those things that we tend to not like about ourselves, other people can see sparkles and glimmers of beauty in that and find, you know, just true, genuine, like pleasure and fun in that. And so one of my things with radical self-love too that I want to leave people with is one of the things that has helped me most. And y'all, like, you're gonna laugh at this, but play. Like, I was robbed of play as a child, and so, you know, it's not uncommon to see me take like a bubble machine. There's a beautiful trailhead that has like a bunch of different trails, but before you get to it, there's a fire pit area that you can go, and I do a lot of meditation there. I do a lot of like bringing out my speaker and like dancing, and so, you know, I think nobody's around, then I'll see hikers or people like walking, probably like, oh, what is she doing over there? But for my 50th birthday, I took a bubble machine out there, and I had a beautiful like long skirt because I used to love to twirl when I was little, and I just celebrated and had fun by myself. I threw myself a party and joined it. And, you know, to the outside, I think we worry about too much about what the outside world thinks or what other people think of our own journey. And we need to ask, what do we think about our journey?
Yeah. I know for myself, I agree 100%. You know, childhood was not something that I got to enjoy. And when I'm in a relationship where I feel safe to be silly, I know I'm in a good relationship, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's one of my criteria for being in a relationship, you know, is that I can be silly and have fun and play, and yeah, it's an important part of especially for those of us whose childhood was robbed from us.
Yeah.
To
And yeah, I had a lot of mocking and cruelty from adults when I was little. And so everything I did was put under a microscope and just ridiculed and laughed and mocked, and having people join in on that and point and laugh and mock. And so like for a long time, like I was terrified of that part of me that had that longing to just have fun and be silly and goof off, because that was really like pushed down and destroyed. And so there's a saying that children that are abused don't stop loving their abusers, they stop loving themselves. And so my journey of radical self-love is learning how to love in that way. Like, it, you know, when I feel mocked or I feel misunderstood, getting curious about that and not mocking myself because of it, because I feel some sort of way about it too. So you all, this is a journey that's a lifelong journey. And I wish for those of you that came for easy ABC 1, 2, 3, 7 steps to radical self-love, I'm so sorry.
Doesn't work that way.
It is a continued conversation that we invite. Like Russ and I love having conversations about hard topics, about fun topics, like about all topics really. But we invite you.
I like Alicia's suggestion on having a conversation on intimate relationships.
Yeah, I'm actually writing a book about that.
Yeah, and you and I have specifically had conversations both personally and professionally from a professional perspective of the important need for some sort of help for those of us who have been through intimate trauma, how to be in a healthy relationship, and then how to help our partners who may not have been through that type of trauma to understand and to be supportive and patient with us, because trust us, we require an extra level of patience.
Yeah, there's a level to 11 people like us that, woo. Yeah, and so Alicia, like I do, like when I started writing the book about like intimacy and sexual health after, CSA and exploitation and trafficking, I thought in that moment that I started writing it, I'm gonna write this book, I got this, and I wrestled with it, and it wasn't like I was having a hard time getting, and I think it was because I needed to go through the next step or the next part, and so now, like, woo. Like I got some more things to add. And so, yeah, Russ and I love talking about that part of anything healing or thriving, but yeah, that is another continued conversation. Right.
Yeah.
And so,
well,
hi, Becky.
We definitely got to do this again.
Yeah.
Yes. You all have kind of committed yourself by being so awesome to doing this again. The people want more, so we have to give the people what they want. So
and Russ and I love it. Like, you love having these hard conversations because they're the necessary conversations that everybody shies away from. And I'm like, why are we shying away from these kind of conversations? Because they're the ones that are going to bring the breakthrough that people need. Breakthrough is kind of a trendy word, but like you all know what I mean.
It gives people permission to like talk about things that others are telling them they shouldn't talk about. So
that's why my social media doesn't look like everybody else's social media, and I write my ugly stuff out there and like lay it all out. People are like, why do you do that? And I'm like, because this is life. This is life for me. Like,
and this is why
it's not roses and rainbows.
This is why I don't have social media.
Oh, I love it. Yes.
Hate social media.
Oh, well, thank you both so much. The only thing I don't like about Survivor Circles is that they're only an hour. I want them to go so much longer, but that just means that you have to come back and talk some more. So we will be doing that.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.